record, so I'm going to go ahead and start it. But I think the biggest thing, and we can explain it to Leah a little bit, is when we have conversations, we don't make it formal at all. It's just having a conversation like we normally do. And we do that because we get our best content when it's more comfortable and it's less, I don't know, professional, I guess would be the best way to put it.
I'm nothing if not professional. Come on.
I work really good in structured professional military style settings. So when I'm on camera, no matter what setting it is, I get a little bit nervous though.
It's okay. No worries. Well, what do you think of our backdrop? Are you a Maple Leaf stan, Leah?
Oh yeah, totally. I grew up, yeah, definitely.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that's what we want, that, because otherwise I would have to go in and change my setting and put two different teams on here, and James would be mad at me. So
I'm not overly concerned, and it's whatever background you want to put on there. So I have to,
no, I'm just giving you guys a hard time.
Well, I have to figure things out because to let you know, Fitness Coach and I are doing our first, it won't be live, but we're going to Costco to start our second podcast, the Autistic Guide to Adulting thing. So he and I are meeting at Costco on Thursday, and we're videotaping not the entire thing, but the shopping, putting stuff in the cart, and then we're going to start that series. I've got a couple other people who are willing to do that, me as well, so I've got to do that. I got lots to say because we haven't talked in a couple of weeks, so there's been lots going on. So, you know me, I might start dominating the conversation, but
there's two women here, so who knows?
I know.
Like last time we spoke cricket, it might just be you and I. James might just sit there smiling like a pretty boy.
Thanks for calling me pretty. But yeah, I told you I got and I want to touch with you on this, on that presentation I'm doing later on this year with Sarah with EPCOR. I'm basically using all my contact information for Sounds of Autism. So I put that in my biography that I'm the director with you. So EPCOR is probably one of the biggest employers in Alberta. And they've got a neurodiverse work plan and workforce. That's how actually I got to talking, is that one of the ladies who works there is neurodiverse, and she's wanted them to come up with a neurodiverse training and work program. So when she asked for a presentation, she wanted someone on the spectrum to come talk. So Sarah thought of me. So that's a big first step in there. I started training on Wednesday with Canada Post. We'll have to sort of change our time over the next couple of weeks. And I got approached by TD Bank. They sent an offer letter doing their background checks. So that's not something I'm not sure if I'm going to take or not.
I don't think he wants to take it. It's just old routine is comfortable. That's probably why.
Yes, she's been consulting me on what I should do because she's a lot more into reading body and energy than I am. I can feel safe in saying that. She's more in tune with that.
I'm not good at reading my own body language. Well, I'm learning how to read my own body language to be self-aware, but I'm really good at reading all the body language around me. Well, maybe not abstract social cues, but I'm really good at reading body language.
Whereas,
and when he talks about working at a bank, it's not just his body language, but it's the tone of voice. There's just all these things going around telling him not to do it. His body language tenses up a tiny bit. But when he talks about the Canada Post job, it's just something simple, something like a physical job that's not mental or emotional taking home. He smile on his face. There's always positive things he's saying about it. So I feel like his subconscious has already told him what he wants.
I think that Leah's onto something there. Well, with me, because of my restaurant background, body language and reading people's minds and all that kind of stuff was something that you had to creatively learn because of the business. If you wanted to be good at it, you had to understand when people needed something or they were looking for something, you could almost answer their questions. Kind of, instead of you approaching the table, can I get you something? You would approach it with, did you need another fork? I noticed your fork is on the ground. Or do you need another napkin? I noticed that you're not able to wipe your face, or whatever it is, and you already kind of shared what somebody needed, and they were amazed that you knew those things. But when you do it over and over and over
Yeah.
again, repetition helps you, right, to learn.
And working with children too, you have to know their needs, right, before they do. Well, they won't even ever know their needs, right? You're supposed to be, as the caregiver, knowing their needs. So as a mother, I'm sure you know,
Maternal. Yep.
yeah, it's like a maternal thing, but for me as well, has a lot to do with trauma when I was a little kid, and for autistic behaviors actually, and torture and whatever. And so I had to learn at a young age how to read my environment so that I'm safe as I can be, because I was unprotected for a little bit. So, and then also I think now working with children, it's a big thing for me, is to be able to read them so that I can provide them the most secure and safe environment possible, because I didn't have that as a child. So, but yeah, it's interesting. It does take a lot of practice, and the more that I work with children, the better I get at it. And I notice it with adults too. So it's not just in children I see it now, but also with adults. So practice makes perfect. Repetition is learning. So, and when autistic people, they move and repeatedly move, it actually is in the brain. It's part of the learning process. So everyone's like, oh, they're disabled, but we're not. It just means we're learning, and it's our safe place. So when we're moving repeatedly, it's not because we have like tremors or something, but it's because we're in our safe zone. It means we're in a safe zone, and we're able to learn in that safe zone. If we don't move though, we're not in the safe zone. So it has nothing to do with disability, and more to do with just the learning process in the brain. And that was random, but it came up. So I said it.
No, I'm glad that you did that. Well, and you know what? The the first steps in our program for Sounds of Autism, we have 16 programs, and it's prenatal till the end of life. But the first 4 that we focus on we call them our survival skills. And it's exactly that, because there's a processing delay, and there's a need to understand the processing delay. Not only do we want to teach the processing delay to the families, but the person that has the autism, but we also want to teach them that that is a moment that is crucial for making decisions. Because if you make a decision, you may not realize you're in trouble until after you've made that decision and it's too late. And so with predators and things like that, this could be a really very bad situation for you.
Oh yeah, totally. And I used to be like you're talking about, I used to be super just like, because I'm not consciously present in emotions until later, so it's, even though my memory and the visual is always there, it's white noise until later, or nightmares or terrors or whatever. So, having to learn how to manage the sensory overload, feel safe in it, learn how to recognize those sensory awarenesses or emotional awarenesses so that we're safe. So important to teach parents and children, because with autism, the sensory overload automatically disconnects that emotional consciousness, right, of emotion. So we might never really truly connect with it, but to teach awareness to children is so important, because like you're saying, there are predators out there, especially nowadays where it's so easy for predators online. So like children are getting attacked online, and they have nowhere to hide. So it's like, so yeah, I think what you just explained is awesome. I really appreciate that that's out there for children, but autistic children especially. It's awesome.
Well, and James, I think Leah just said something about the emotional piece of it. I don't know if you caught that, and you were probably processing, because we've had a lot of conversations about that same topic recently.
Yeah.
And I know that that's something that you had to work through, or you're working through as well.
Well, yeah, like relationship wise, and said the work situation, that's because really through the process, and I tried this process, they phoned me. I didn't disclose my autism during the interview process, and I got the job within the week. No, it's a similar job I've applied to before. But it comes down to that eternal conflict. Like the one job, as you said, It's flexible. I can still do everything I want to do. I won't be compromising who I am or not be put in a position maybe to do that. The bank job obviously pays more. I'm not sure if I want it. I'm not sure if I'll get it based on, there's some credit issues that I have. I'm not sure if the bank will accept that. There's a few different things going on. And for me, even on the emotional side of things, I had my friend out in Winnipeg had some emotional things happen. I have a coach here now it's great to have her because she's autistic and a female. So when I don't get how to communicate.
That's all men, not just autistic men. It's all men. They're just a different species.
I was talking. But the thing was that there was this issue, and I texted back, and then Leah could tell I was anxious about it. And then she said, "Well, what did I say to my friend's response?" "No, that's all wrong. This is what you should have said." "Well, that's what I meant." I said, "No, it's not. That's not what you said." So she typed something out. It got to be fine, but even then, the communication with me, and this is again what I'm working on with my therapist and my speech pathologist and my coach and you and Leah. I've built myself a great sort of support system to try to help figure things out. But the biggest thing for me is still working on my own emotional stuff.
And texting.
And the general, again, because this has happened to me before where I've had a friend who was a female. I did something that I just thought was nice. Just because that's naturally who I am. I didn't think anything of it. Yet, as social expectations are, friends of theirs thought, well, he's interested in you in that way. And I wasn't. But the thought of it and it being brought up to my friend.
And him being male, autistic, and not aware of himself, and all the signals he's giving to people who aren't autistic and male.
But it cost me friendships and cost me relationships. Now, I went to Winnipeg to see her because I talked with Kara, and what Kara told me, that's my therapist, she said, you define your relationships and how you communicate within them. It doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, a business relationship, whatever it is. As long as you're clear in communication and define what you mean in that relationship. Like for me, this all started with, I sent a couple of heart emojis in text, just thinking, I miss you, I care about you. So I just, not knowing what that meant. It's not nice to say that I'm stupid.
I don't like the word stupid either.
Yeah,
I was just making a disassociative joke.
But
or is it a joke?
She took it as something else. But it brought my anxiety to play because of what's happened to me previously. And me being aware of that, I went to see her and she got upset. But eventually it just came out. She felt like another friend had, and
you're not finishing your sentences.
Another male friend, wanted her to do more than be friends and whatever.
At the same time that James sent her heart emojis. So it kind of triggered that for her. And if James didn't go down in person and visit her and speak this out instead of just doing everything over a text message, he ended up fixing it. They're friends back again. And she also apologized as well to James, which was nice. And they're talking and they're friends and they both worked it out. But if James hadn't gone there, I'm sorry, I'm just completing it for you because you're not finishing your sentences. You keep going on.
Well, I wasn't done talking.
But no, I thought it was really awesome that he did that because I feel like not even just being autistic, but 7% of communication is in text messages, right? So when we're reading someone else's text messages, 93% of what we're getting from it is from our own, like we're basically talking to ourselves in the mirror. And so I feel like James was really awesome to just go down there and do that and just talk to her and say, hey, this is what's going on. Like, let's fix this. I like that. That was super awesome.
And the thing I found with her, when we're in person, we talk, there's no issues when we actually talk and she sees my body. And we had this conversation numerous times, it seems like. But yeah, that's what it came down to. We both got triggered by different things. And her big thing was that she felt guilty if I came because she wouldn't have time to spend with me because she wants to spend time with me. And that's the difficult thing about having any sort of friendship relationship that's long distance because it's not normal. Like I can't just do something normal like I do with Leah. Like, well, you want to go for a coffee next week? Okay, that's no problem. But you don't
drink coffee, so
yeah, but
tea.
It was a theoretical example.
Oh, okay.
But when you're 1,300 miles away, you can't just do that. You can't, oh, I'll see you next week, or we'll go for a coffee, or
Is that far away?
yeah, Winnipeg's 1,300 kilometers, so it's
Whoa! Sorry, I didn't realize it
but
was so far.
it puts strains on, and she's busy, I'm busy. But there it was, and that's what I told her, is that I valued our relationship, our friendship, and we've talked about a lot of it. Again, when we're in person, and I feel disconnected because I prefer talking, as you probably have gathered over the last few months, rather than texting, just for that fact is that
Yeah.
His text messages are totally not what he's trying to say. They're like way off. So yeah, it just confuses people. I do the exact same thing. When I send a message, I like send 10 million messages at once, and people just get confused, and they're just like, it's all over the place. And so yeah.
Speaking of text, I got 17 text messages from her this morning already. But I know that about myself.
17? Oh my God, I didn't realize it was 17.
I was doing my workout in a span of 15 minutes. There were 17 text messages, just various things from her. But
I smashed my phone, and I guess I sent 17 text messages about smashing my phone this morning. Not like I'm angered, just I dropped it. And
that's the difference. I understand that's her, and I don't get bothered or anything by it. I understand that
people do get bothered by it, not you though.
And that's sort of how we being on both on the spectrum.
Is that an autistic thing? Do autistic people just text too much?
Well, it could be. I don't know, but for us it's different. But we understand that we've talked about it, and that's for me the biggest thing is I'm working on becoming.
I'm so sorry that I have to interrupt you. My dog has cancer, and she's trying to go out, so I have to let her go out. So give me 1 second, okay? Just 1 second. Yes. You guys can have a conversation while I'm doing this. Come on, Gracie. Come on. Let's go. Let's go. Hands back. Come on.
It's easy. I start talking, you correct what I'm saying. You can be my interpreter. No, that's not what he's saying.
I'm probably not making sense either, though.
Together we'll complete one thought or a sentence and will make sense with you. That's
I definitely have met messages. I have problems with text messages. I didn't realize I sent so many text messages. Oh my God. I'm just like, and then just press send. I don't pay attention to when I'm texting. It just happens. And then I texted it, and I'm like, shit, what did I just say? I don't even read it before I press send. And then, yeah.
Well, it's like you don't complete a thought. You just, I didn't mention that. So you got to just, you're adding to complete a thought. I thought it, and you probably read it back. So I'm like, no, I need to say this. And then all of a sudden, but I know that's you. That's, it's not to worry about it because I understand that's how you communicate.
Over communicate or under communicate, either one.
I think she wanted water. She wanted water, but I think she's going to have to go out in a second. So if you see me get up, just keep talking and I'll just do it real quick. But yeah, I think she has breast cancer. We took her to the doctor, a month back because her hind legs are really bad. She can't walk hardly. And she has something with her vertebrae, I think it is that they said. But because she's 12 years old, they don't want to do anything because she's just too old to go through surgery and the trauma and stuff like that. So we're just kind of helping her through her journey right now.
And give her some, it's not legal in the States. I was going to say, you could go to the pet store and get her some, it's not marijuana, but it's cannabinoid dog treats. And they actually really relax the dog muscles and stuff like that. My dog also has he's a tripod though, and had broken bones from his previous owner, and they abused and neglected him. So they set wrong. So he has the similar kind of pain as what you're describing with your dog, but for different reasons. And that was the best thing I noticed. Because I find a lot of pain medication that if they do give it to you, it's really strong. Yeah. And it's actually, though gabapentin it's pretty good, and it's actually a little bit easier on their body.
That's what she's taking. That's what she's taking. Really? Gabapentin. Yeah. That's usually something else. Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
I hope she's okay anyways.
Thank you.
She's your family for 12 years, so I understand totally.
It's tough. Yeah, it's a tough one. And now every time we wake up, there's things we got to do. It's just different. You know what I mean? She's kind of like in a hospice mentality right now. So,
well, it's like babies in diapers and seniors, seniors when they're, at their last few days. It's the same as dogs are the same way. Puppies, they have to be taken care of, and then all of a sudden they're older and they have to also the same way.
I know. It's so sad. It's just hard.
Sad, but in a way, if you think about it, she lived a beautiful long life with you guys. So
12
and
years.
you're loving her and taking care of her to the end. So don't think of it as sad. Think of it as, I guess, empowering, because she's having a loving life. So
good thinking. Good job.
Yeah.
So I am sorry to interrupt, James, because you were talking and sharing about, just the stuff that was going on between you in conversations with people, that don't understand or however that goes. And I didn't want to interrupt you because I like what you're talking about. And I think it's super important for people to understand that. So if you still...
That's the biggest thing with going back to that. Like professionally, I know because I've learned how to act in a professional environment. So I know what certain technical things mean. It's easy for me to communicate when it's not really emotional. And that's honestly what the biggest concern about going back to the bank is. I fall back into that behavior and not
disassociation from personal and full on for professional for other people. Yeah.
Because when I did my therapy and my value system in care of others, as we talked about, is a top, and that's what I'm afraid of, is that I'll start compromising what I'm working on personally and growing that way and working with you and doing other things that actually mean something. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of, not just people on the spectrum, but everyone needs to, that life work balance, because fortunately money needs to be made and certain things like that,
it's hard for people on the spectrum,
having a better job with better pay, with benefits, everything else is enticing, but how much of me am I going to compromise by going back there? When I got hired, it was like when I was talking to the branch manager, they're all, yes, we're inclusive and we're all this sort of stuff. But I've heard that before, like he is a black male, so he mentioned it himself, because I asked him why he liked working at the bank, at this bank, and he said, well, because they're inclusion, I'm a minority and that sort of thing. And I said, well, I have autism, so I'm even more of a minority, so I'm not sure how much of that he really picked up on. And then you get the offer letter, there's accessibility and support. It mentions that right in the offer letter. We're all about that, accommodations and that sort of thing. I haven't talked to them about that, because I'm basically going to have to say, well, I have a therapist I see for 1 hour each week. I have a coach I see for 1 hour each week. I have a call with you 1 hour each week as part of my accommodation. I have my speech pathologist. I have an hour. I do that every day.
Yeah, people don't get it because we don't need accommodations. We just need to know that we can feel safe in communication and because we, like you're saying, it's easy to go to work and be professional us, and then come home. It's not easy to be personal us in our own bodies and mind. Sensory overload, if you've never learned how to manage it in a safe environment, and you're an adult like me and James, because we both had a late diagnosis, even though we were both super autistic. I don't know how James didn't know, because he's a male and his face tone is monotone kind of. So I don't know how people didn't know he was autistic, but I'm a girl and female, and we're just better species. And so I'm just joking. Actually, I'm not. It's kind of a fact. But anyway, so being, learning so late and realizing, like, even him as a male masked his whole life. Like, not masking is just like, it's not being a different person that you aren't. It's being different parts of yourself and never 100% of yourself. So like when we have to come home and we have to be 100% of ourselves and we don't know how to be, we just think about work again, or think like it's so hard to be in a personal life. And I don't know about James, but especially me, I have a lot of trauma and PTSD. So that's like sensory overload on top of sensory overload. So for a while I couldn't even function in society, and I'm high intelligence. I've spent my whole life working and getting my way, like through my life all, alone. And I feel like now, because I didn't know any of it, I didn't learn how to manage it. And same as James, we're both struggling in that sense. Like, what if because I'm self-employed and I work with children, but that kind of job takes like mental, emotional, and physical work all at once. And so I take it home with me. I can't do a job like that right now because I don't know how to be in my own space. So if I have a job like that, I'll 100% be there, but I won't be in my own, and it's not healthy for anyone at the end of the day. And I just feel like I'm like James, I had to take a break and step back from that kind of life because I need something physical that I can do that doesn't come home with me mental and emotional, because I'm learning that. And I feel I read in a study that children with autism, they learn these management skills, but they actually have to continually practice them throughout life, because if they stop, even as adults, it's almost like they have to start again. Because it's like I like to do my bacon. Can I do the bacon one? Like, for example, things like that are chemical based, depression, things like that have happened over time. They change the chemicals in the brain. It's like when you're baking a cake, for example. So autism and depression, we'll just use those two as an example, just kind of came on top of my head because depression is 1/3 of the world, according to WHO. So anyways, baking a cake with depression. So depression is like, oh no, I don't have salt or sugar. So when you bake a cake, the salt and sugar, you can still bake a cake, but I mean, it's not going to be sweet. And the salt, or baking soda or whatever, if you don't have one of those ingredients, it's going to really affect the taste of the cake. However, you can still put it in the oven and you can bake it and it'll bake to whatever. With autism, however, we just don't have the oven. So like we have all the ingredients and everything, we put it all in and we can learn how it's supposed to be when we put it in the oven and we bake it, but we'll never actually bake it. Like we'll never have that connection. So like we can bake it in someone else's oven. We can learn about it and how it's supposed to be. And we can taste it after the fact and be like, oh, this is what happens after we bake it. And then if we learn that and we learn from that experience, then we continually have to practice putting all the, recipe together, put it in the oven, but it will never bake. But then we can, we'll know what it's going to taste like if it bakes. So like, it's people who are colorblind too as well. They can never actually see meat being cooked. So they know they've practiced their whole life because it's still pink, but they can't see the pink, right? Some colorblind. So like they have to ask other people, like, is this cooked? But then after time, they've practiced enough where they know the texture. They can kind of see like through different experiences how it's cooked. It's similar to autism. So it's one of those things that is a continuous practice throughout life. And when you've not practiced for 33 to 42 years, thought he was 60. Just joking. That was a joke. I didn't think he was 60. I knew he was 42. But it's like a shock almost to the system. So I think both of us, it's more about just learning how to be safe in our skin.
And for me, like I said, with the bank, and that cost me my personal stuff, and going back, because it's different because I'm on my own this time, but will it kill me and drain me the same way? Like I'm learning coping stuff, but starting a new job, I'm not sure if I'm comfortable in that space, disclosing all that.
Masking all the time. That's why it's exhausting.
Do I go back to old behaviors just to keep the job and whatever else? That's the scary part, is that I know what it cost me before. And I've told you this, I'm worse off financially now than I was, but now I feel better personally because I'm on a different path and I know myself better and I'm learning and I'm growing. How much of that do I want to compromise? And you and I have talked about this, and that's why, I've talked about, let's get me working and earning money with you so I don't have to make that compromise of who I am, learning about my autism, growing as a person, yet earning enough where I don't have to have that stress about money, because doesn't matter what, neurotypical, autistic, what, money is a worry, and basic needs are a worry.
An unreal factor seems to be the most powerful thing in the world for humans. It doesn't make sense to me, but it is. And as a realist person, as an unreal thing object is so important to have and survive as a human, unfortunately. Until Mr. Robot comes along and takes it away. If you ever seen Mr. Robot, it's really good. But anyways, different tangent. That's for me as well. It's like, I need to work, but I know that it's going to definitely, if I do a full-time job, that's anything related to what I specialize with, then it's just going to, it's not going to work out well because I'm just going to forget about my personal life. So It's sad that we have to, we need, like, we can't survive. Like, you may have a savings, but it's gone because bills and everything, everything's so expensive nowadays, even food. Like, just to get like food for a day could be $50. You know, if you want to eat whole food that's natural and not filled with a whole bunch of chemicals that's man-made in the US or something. Sorry, you're from the US, but I'm a nutritionist, so I kind of like, I'm not a nutritionist, but I studied it within my, yeah, but it's, so anyways, you have to work, but how do you find that healthy work-life balance when you're autistic and you don't know how to be in your personal life? How do you make sure that you don't lose that if you go back to a full-time job?
Okay,
Yeah,
so I have a question for you guys. What if you took this job that you're nervous to take, James, because it doesn't make you comfortable, because now you feel like you have to go back to being who you were, which you didn't want to be, because it really wasn't who you were, and you are exhausted when you come home because you're trying to be who you think everybody else wants you to be, and you're trying to fit in, and you're trying to be autistic all at the same time. It's a lot of work just to do all those things. But what if you were to get the job and then you go into this environment, and instead of it being the way that everybody else reacts, why can't you be more comfortable in your skin and share with people, like, I can do this, but this is autism?
The reason I'm not worried about it because I feel more comfortable disclosing in that now,
Sure.
and I will, and let that. But for me, this is what it's like. I meet a client. How much of that do I reveal? How much of that personal connection do I make? And me, my number one value, and you talk, is in care of others. So for me to, like, say you come and you're
It's impossible to go to work. It's impossible to go to work and not 100% focus on someone else.
And for me, that's what I worry about, is that you're my client. You come in, you have an issue and a problem. My brain won't stop until I solve it. That's how I'm wired. Like, I'm great with math. I'm great with people. I read. Like, I don't read body cues well, but on an intellectual level, I understand
needs
of people, personality. That's why my therapist says I have a high level of cognitive empathy. I understand what emotions are. I understand them. I can't feel them, but I understand them.
Consciously, you can't consciously feel them, but
yes.
You can feel them.
So I make that connection, and that takes over. I don't know.
I've seen him cry before.
I haven't learned how to turn that part off in a work environment, because ever since, I've been diagnosed, I've been struggling, and said while I was working, I didn't have.
Will we ever turn it off though?
I didn't have a problem.
I don't want to turn it off. When I work with kids, 100% of me goes to the kids, and I never want to turn that off. And that's our problem. It's not we think about what other people are thinking. It's that we can't turn that masking off. And mothers do masking. It's a natural. That's why females with autism mask more than males. Well, so they say, because females have to, when they give offspring, they have to give whatever that offspring, they have to give whatever that child needs, even if it's not what the mother needs, because the mother needs to care for this baby so this baby can survive in the world later. So it's like, that's kind of what masking is, and for autistic people. And so there's a lot of empathy, but not a lot of sympathy, but there is a lot of empathy. And so when we go to work, it's just an automatic switch. It's not something that we'll ever be able to turn off, but it's one thing that we need to learn how to turn off when we come home. And that's what's difficult, and turn on our personal switch. And
that's what's, to me, that's what I'm afraid of. But again, like I mentioned, I didn't disclose and I got a job. Like, people, and this is one of the things I talked about in my corporate presentation. How much do you disclose? Who do you disclose it to? Will they understand it? Like, and this sounds bad. If I had a physical disability, it's easy for me to go into the bank, say I was in a wheelchair. Oh, here's how we accommodate James. We got to have a ramp to get in. It's easy and simple. It goes in a box, and they it's easy to understand. Oh, James has autism. What does that mean? Like, even in relationships, like my friend in Winnipeg, she is working on trying to understand me. But I've had professional psychiatrists that I've seen, coach, like I'm a certified coach. I was in a coaching seminar. They don't understand me. There's as I told you before, that keynote speaker, he was a psychologist and said all brains work the same.
No.
Professional people who are more learned than just at quote unquote average people who aren't specializing in, psychology or the neurosyncrasies of the brain.
If
and
those
whatever else.
specialists don't know what they're talking about, how are
How-
these normal people going to know what we're talking
And
about?
what I increased my self-consciousness thinking, am I going to get treated differently because they don't know how to treat me? Is that going to, it's all that stuff that goes on. And with me and Leah, our brains work faster. Right? You understand. I work 40% faster. I have a high IQ. I have a genius IQ. So I will go home and I will think about it.
IQ has nothing to do with autism. By the way, I just want to say that because low functioning autism, everyone's like, oh, they have disabilities, but they're just low functioning because super sensory overload and they don't know how to manage it mentally. That's it. That's the only difference between high functioning and low functioning. So I just wanted to say that because you're putting IQ in there, and IQ has nothing to do with autism. Just wanted to say that.
But point is, I will think
low functioning autism can have a super high IQ, like James Saul.
I will think.
They just can't function in the world.
Go back to what I did before is, okay, I have so many interactions with clients tomorrow. My brain will get working, okay, every different scenario that I could encounter with the work people, the client. So I'm mentally prepared to handle every situation so I can act like I'm emotionally connecting with them so I don't appear out of place or anything else. And that's, again, like Leah said, I can't turn that off.
Automatic.
I haven't learned how to turn that off.
There's no thoughts, it's just automatic.
Once I leave the workplace.
Switch on.
And I'm worried again that I get obsessive about helping others and forget about myself, that I'll be working 10 or 11 hours and I'll put that all in there, which again, will lead me to being a great work performer like I always was, because I've always been liked where I've worked. I've always done well where I've worked. And we've talked about extensively why I was not in the field. It's not anything I did. It's, how I got thrown.
So how do we do that? How do we make sure that we turn on the personal switch?
And
we have to practice, but it takes a lot of practice. And when you're 42, you learned in 2017. So it's 4 years. Wow, time flies. So you learned 5 years ago when you're in your late 30s. And how do you, it's like if children spend their whole life learning and have to practice their entire life for 40 years since they're babies, then how is, a man or a woman like myself, after 30 years of not practicing, are we ready to go back out there if we don't have sufficient practice in that repetitive, as we were speaking earlier about repetition and learning? Like, if there's all that time that we missed practicing, then, how much time now do we need to be able to practice that in a healthy way so that when we can go back into these settings, those switches are automatic because we practice so much the repetition, and it's like like breathing, like automatic, right? So.
And for me, as I said, I spent 2.5 years looking for the right therapist. And I just started working and coming to realizations and limitations that I put on myself mentally in that. And I feel as though I'm making progress. But if I go back into the workforce, like I said, one job versus the other, yes, the one makes more money and that'll ease that burden. And I can maybe do some more things that way to work on it. But I might not have as much time to do things that I'm wanting to make a difference.
It's easier to fall back into old habits when you're in the old habits.
So that's
for anyone.
And the problem is, like, for my parents, they want me to take the higher paying job. You're good at it, James. This was your career. You can get back into it, because my mom still refers to it. Like when I told her about the speaking engagement that I've got, oh, you're still helping the people with autism. It's like, she still doesn't.
You're still helping the people.
She doesn't make that connection. She's a different generation, and I've accepted how they see that's my parents. It's their generation. They're not going to probably change their mind. Yeah, that's how she sees it. So again, they'll be like, well, why didn't you take the job that's paying you more, what you're good at, that has the benefits and gear, versus one that's going to pay you, probably $15,000 to $20,000 less a year, but would probably be better for me mentally, and there's that society.
All that stuff he's saying, that's the Canada Post job he's talking about, better for me mentally.
And
but
there's the conflict that my daughter needs me. If I have benefits, my daughter can maybe get more help, but she needs to get help for her. And I could, benefits for me, I could, pay for more therapy.
You do that with Canada Post too, by the way.
I can, well, it's a casual job, so I can.
No, you can. I'll show you how to do it. You can get your own personal health insurance that involves family, and it's actually not that expensive. You can do it. It's a few $100 a month. I'll show you how to do it. I did it before.
But that's there again, the societal expectation of pull versus what I'm thinking and feeling. And that's the pressure, again, I feel, as I said, the autistic me versus the realistic. We live in a society, but I'm hopeful because you and I have talked
We
about,
live in a society that doesn't understand autism needs specialists. What are you meant to finish with?
True story.
and the work I do with you, working, so I'm getting my first paid presentation, like I can build that. So, and I can have more flexibility with that. And
You can be autistic, you and professional.
And as you and I've talked about, that's figuring out how we get this thing going up here. So then you can pay me enough that I don't have to worry about it, and that's what I've talked about with you. And that's what I want to do. I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how do I get there? And like most things, I want to get there yesterday because I want that, sort of thing. And that's where I can bring Leah on to work with me, with you, with you, and we can work her into the organization up here, because then she could do there again. Because just for example, we're working on her thesis that she's taken long to do.
Oh my God.
But the big thing for
don't
her,
go into that, because I'll just, we don't have time for that.
For her, but that's just
we talk about
explaining.
neurobiology forever.
I'm just talking about the work process. She's made more progress while I've been transcribing and working with her, because.
And he's not really good at transcribing. He's kind of shit at typing. But because we're working together and he gets what I'm saying without me having to explain it, it's so much faster than if I'm by myself and just continuing to do research, not writing,
or she sit with someone who
writing 30,000 words,
doesn't understand how her brain works. Yeah. Like she does stuff, and she apologized one time for it. And I said, don't need to apologize. I understand. Because
most people would maybe take offense to it or something and think I'm trolling, but actually it's just odd.
And she started to cry because she said, James, it's just so nice to work with someone.
Cry.
You did cry.
Sure. Okay.
You did.
I'm just joking. Crying is healthy, and it's vibrations of energy out of the body, and it's positive emotions, right?
But she did, because she said, it's just so nice to work with someone that understands me, that I don't have to explain. Like, she has certain idiosyncrasies that in a quote unquote professional workplace, other people might find odd, for lack of a better term. But I understand that's her process of thinking and getting her thoughts out. And that's how she works. And she doesn't have to explain that over and over and over again. And she doesn't have to feel self-conscious about it. Just like me, as when I'm talking and she finishes up, well, this is what you meant to say. And said, well, yeah, but she understands that without me having to get into detail about explaining. And that's what happens with the texting. When I'm talking, I feel the need to just keep adding words and keep repeating myself. Because
we have all these different strings of thoughts of prevention in our brain that like we just have to, and so it's not even about the other person. We don't even think about the other person when we're texting. We're just thinking about the future and what different possibilities. And so texting becomes all those different threats, possibilities, and people don't get it. And they think that we're trying to tell them something or control them something. And so then just texting is the worst way ever for an autistic, any person really in general, but for an autistic person especially, to focus so much on it. So I feel like technology definitely is a huge thing that needs to be managed in autistic children, teenagers, and adults.
Like for me with the texting thing, I'd like to text like, and this sounds, it's easier with my buddies. Easier. We're meeting at 5:00 here. Okay, boom, that's it. That's for me. That's how I'd want to text. I don't want to have an actual conversation. Yeah. There's people who want to have that kind of conversation in texting, and
he's not good at it. Believe me, I read some of his texts. It's like, oh my God, they're all over the place. No,
I'm not,
to his friend, not to me. To his friend.
I'm not good at it, and I recognize that. But someone who doesn't fully understand how I'm wired and how I communicate might misconstrue what I'm trying to convey, because words in that context are difficult for me. You get me in my financial advisor role, that's no problem. I know that's easy, that's learned, that's simple, that's fact. Just like if I talk math or anything else, that's easy. When I'm trying to, communicate personally, it's more difficult. And as I said, it's cost me past relationships.
Oblivion is great sometimes, but yeah, when you get older and you're trying to build strong relationships, James was telling me that he was bullied when he was younger. And through his experiences, I had these same experiences, but I was so oblivious that like for me, torture when I was really young, and then I went to school in Smiles, laughing just was good. I was like, oh, this is good. They like it, but they were just making fun of me. But the same thing happened to me. And I was just so oblivious that I didn't know I was bullied my whole life. And then the people thought I was this carefree bird but then I get into relationships and they see this like, oh, she's such a free hippie, like blah, blah, blah. But actually I'm just oblivious to bullying.
But can I
And,
ask you,
or
Leah,
what
has
happened.
that like when that happened today, does that bother you now? Like, does it hurt your feelings, or it doesn't even bother you? Like, you're just
God,
like,
no.
oh,
I'm so happy from how I see James when he talks about it, and his whole like body language goes, and he doesn't recognize it, but he gets very like just uncomfortable in his skin, and I can see the pain. And I have other friends who are bullied, and because I ended up being friends with the bullies because I just was such a weirdo that like I had no idea they were bullying me, and I'd go to like these school dances and I'd be like, come on everybody, do the shimmy, and like I do the lawnmower, and I thought people were laughing that it was a cool thing they were making, but they thought I was a free bird. So we ended up being friends. And so I think if I knew I was autistic and I knew that I had to have these different things that were different than other people, I think I wouldn't have had those friendships that I ended up having. And it did, I will say, affect. I've had 2 long-term relationships, and not knowing I'm autistic and not knowing and being oblivious to that kind of stuff really affected how they interpreted me as a partner, different from how they saw me at the beginning. But in friendships, it never really it wasn't a bother, right? Because you don't have to go that deep into the heart, I guess. But with relationships as an adult, it did affect me. But I'm glad, looking back, I'm super glad seeing all the pain that other people have suffered, being aware that they're being bullied. It kind of, I laugh at it because it was a blessing in disguise that I was tortured as a kid, so that all laughing meant happy things. So, and being autistic and not knowing it, I think was really a blessing too in disguise for most of my life, because I think would I had the experiences, the beautiful experiences as human beings, if I would have known I was being bullied? I don't know. Right. So maybe I'd be a loner and I would have avoided humans, and I would not want to go outside, and, because then, so yeah, I love it. I'm so glad I was oblivious to it.
well, because then
And
you
me,
would
I-
have
Short story long, as
changed.
James likes to say.
You guys
and for
would
me,
change.
it's
Sorry? What
Go
did you
ahead.
say? Sorry.
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say,
No, what
with
did
you
you
guys, you would both change your behaviors if you knew. You would try to adapt to what other people wanted you to be instead of being who you are.
that's annoying. Like I said, when I got diagnosed,
I don't know.
made a lot of things make
No.
sense to me. It made me question a lot of.
I connected to my identity.
What
Did you?
was I acting that way because to fit in, or was that who I really am?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've had a close group of friends, like 2 or 3, since I was 8 years old, and that's sort of been where maybe I was oblivious to being as bullied. I recognized it more once I got diagnosed, and I've looked back on things, and working in therapy and that sort of thing. Yeah, it is like,
Also, men are weaker than women, and that's probably why. That's a joke. Joking.
Oh.
Bad joke.
but I've always adapted to whatever, and that cost me personally. As Leah's had a couple long-term, about my long-term relationship, and
But like,
it explained a lot of things with why I was the way I was. It explained.
would you change it though? Would you go, Cricket asked, would you go back and would you change
Yes.
it now knowing? Would you change
I
it?
would, because it would allow me to have been a better coping as an adult. Like, I haven't learned proper coping, and that's what cost me a long-term relationship. And it might have cost me a soulmate type of relationship, because I didn't know or realize what my feelings were and how I were with Stacy, because it just felt different. I didn't feel those expectations of who I was and how I had to be. I've had conversations with Stacy since, and I just sensed that you were different, and she sensed that, and I sensed that unknowingly, and things were just easier. I didn't feel I had to be a certain way. Like,
Do you think things would be, if you known you were autistic, do you think you guys still be together?
well, we were never together.
No, but I mean, do you think you'd be together if
Maybe.
you were aware of your autism?
We might be. I don't know. I can't, obviously you can't go back, and hindsight's 2020.
I wouldn't change anything, Cricket, but I would change my relationship, because I feel like when anything gets too close, that's important to know these kinds of things, especially like in a professional setting, maybe not always, but in deep relationships, it's so important to be connected to your self-identity, because when we're not, and we don't feel safe in our skin, whether it's for trauma or for just the fact that we don't know we're autistic and we're weird and we don't know why, and you know, it does help. I wouldn't change the past. I did learn a lot from it, but one thing I would change is I wish I knew in my deep two relationships, because whether we're meant to be together or not, whether we'd still be together or not, at least if I knew, I wouldn't have, my inability to be intimate, for example, or hold hands, or like sensory overload. And I don't like, in public especially, I don't like to be touched. I understand that now, sensory overload and being autistic, but before it just hurt their feelings, and they felt like I didn't even like them or want to, even though we were in love and lived together and all that stuff. You know, it was a big factor that actually ended our relationship at the end of the day. And I feel like now that I know, one thing I could do, if I could do anything, is go back and just show them, so that the pain of whatever pain I may have caused wouldn't be there anymore. And yeah,
And
if
for
that
me,
makes sense.
and for me, it's twofold. One, I have a daughter, and if I was diagnosed earlier, she might have to give her that extra time. And for, again, the relationship stuff, like I'm different than Leah when it comes. Stacy was a friend. She said friends can hold it, because for me, the like touch is something that calms me when I'm anxious. And Stacy made it easy, just like in my relationship with my friend. I've had that discussion where friends can hold hands, and she understands that I'm not making a move, or that I'm thinking. For me, it's a calming thing. You know, the touching, you know, has calmed me. Like,
and that's maybe because you had normal, when I was little, a lot of the reason I don't like it in sensory overload is because of violence and stuff. So that's, for me, that's, I think, where the touching is too much, and my body never learned how to process that. I'm learning that now, but I don't know if it's, but it could also be male or female with autism. I don't know, because I know lots of males who like to be touched and females don't, so who knows.
but for me, there again, it was having people that understand, like females that understand that about me, you know, and it made the friendship and that, and the thing I sense differently, and I've talked about this, and I'm trying to figure that out, you know, like with my friend in Winnipeg, there again, she has a, again, different idea from her experience of what certain actions mean based on society. Okay, you're doing this, so I'm thinking.
That's
this,
also
that,
just
that,
females. We
that
generally have to worry a little bit more with males, because males have testosterone.
You know, but I guess apparently my testosterone is different because my mind controls it.
It's not about autism. That's male, female, my friends.
Leah explains all this stuff, and some of it goes over my head. But for me, in relationships, I said Stacy sensed that and made it easy. So then that weight was like, she sensed that, and she said, you know, friends can hold hands, and you know, we hugged, and you know, with her and my friend, like, you know, massage her feet. There's things like that that in normal relationships that would mean something more than it does in a relationship with me because of my autism. And I've had the conversation, so that's understood. And that goes back to what Kara, my therapist, said, is that you just
stuff missing from your conversation.
Yeah,
so it sounds like you're kind of
yes, I'm weird and quirky. And,
no, you sound like a man talking about
but,
I massage your feet and like holding hands, and like you're talking about all that stuff.
But it's as Kara said, and that's really helped me in our therapy session. I need to define the relationships and communicate and let people, it doesn't matter what kind of relationship it is, whether it's, you know, personal or business, how best to communicate and how I communicate and what I mean. And
how touch makes you feel safe. So when you're holding hands or rubbing feet, you feel safe with that person. So it's not because you want to be their boyfriend or something. It's because you're just feeling safe in their space.
And that's, you know, conversations I've had with, you know, Stacy and Elena, and really those are the only two that I've had that, again, out of my brain, just feeling, and I don't know what it is. It's feeling of peace, relaxation, that my brain's not in control. I don't know what exactly it means, because I don't know what it means. I don't know what my feelings mean, or I don't know what that means, and that's what I'm pursuing, and whatever else, and I'm learning and that sort of thing. And
To be
need-
consciously aware of them, that you know what they
and
need.
I want to be around those people because that helps me grow and be learning about myself. And it's a most
People who can mindfully communicate to us, is what-
and
those kind of people.
and most again,
which are his two friends, Stacy and the other friend.
and one understands more than the other because they have an autistic child now, so she understands that better, and she's a little bit more mature when it comes to understanding that they're in different stages in life and everything else. But to feel that safe space is, sometimes I overdo me and what we talked about. That's why I went to see her, because of that anxiety and fear and scaring of losing her because of the safe space that I feel when it's created.
And it worked out really well.
And I've got to, it's difficult. Again, the communication and whatever else for me is difficult.
It's inspiring. He did it, and it inspires me to do it too. I mean, not go to Winnipeg and see the person that he saw, but yeah.
But for me, it was,
In my own life.
I overcame my anxiety to do it.
Mhm.
And they said initially she was a little upset and felt that I disrespected what she had told me. She said, James, that's the first time you've ever disrespected what I had to say. And I told him, I said, well, it wasn't clear because she texted me on it and we didn't talk. So, but then I explained where I was coming from, how scared I was.
A lot of things are clear, but he didn't read them because he's a man.
But when we had the
It's a
conversation,
back joke.
when we talked about what triggered each of it, we came to that, and things were fine because I was able to communicate that in my way, and she was open to accepting that because I've never lied to her, and she knows that I'm honest, and she knows, like most people, and Leah said this to me, you said it to me, I have a kind soul and a kind heart and all this other sort of stuff.
And autistic people can't lie because it's unreal, but we can leave out the truth.
So she senses that about me, and the journal of who I am comes through. And there again, she's going through her own stuff, but there again, I don't know if she's going through it until we actually have a conversation. So,
Well, if it's to protect a child, I'll lie. Not in a bad way, but if there's a gun to a child's head and someone's like, blah, 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 then I'll lie just to make sure that that's probably dark, but my life is dark. So
it's a little different. I don't know where you got that from what I was saying.
Anyways, I thought I had to re-explain what I said because I didn't. Anyways.
But there again, that's the biggest thing when it comes to me. It's something I learned, and something I learned again from finding the proper therapist who understands how I'm wired, because she's a neurodiverse person as well. So she understands that, and she's a professional who understands how my brain is wired. Not exactly, because no autistics are the same, but she understands that, and we had
our learning process is the same.
Our process
in the brain
is the same in the brain,
but we are different in personality, of course.
Just what you can tell between us two in this conversation, the difference in mannerisms and personalities. And
he likes you touch that I don't.
But we understand that about each other, and it's easy. And I'm trying relationships outside of this, and I want time to grow in those. Work, a kind of work, balancing the money versus that, and just again, that's
the most important thing I think is if you can be in a workplace and they are able to not know we're autistic, but mindfully communicate so that we feel safe at work enough to be in our autistic self, as well as that means that when we come home, we're able to communicate with ourselves, if that makes any sense. I work with a mother who, and I think I've introduced you to her cricket. I don't know if you guys have spoken yet, but she's amazing. And she was one of the first people ever to be able to help me feel safe in mindful communication. And I appreciate that for the rest of my life. I find it helped me through one of the hardest times in my life, because I'm learning that I'm autistic quite late and working through a lot of stuff I thought was PTSD is actually autism, and it's awesome. It's empowering. I didn't have the right tools, right? So I'm just getting those tools and having that mindful awareness and feeling safe and communicating. She doesn't know how things are. Like the way she's interpreting things is totally different, but she's willing to be open to seeing a different side of it. Or she's willing to have patience to talk about it. Like that's important, I think, in a workplace, is having that mindful patient. And I've been lucky. I've actually experienced that, not having autistic or tell them about my personal life, but just having that experience where your boss teaches you, because I didn't learn I don't know how to mindfully communicate with myself as much as I do.
Now, I'm trying to figure that out, which
Self-awareness
can make things more difficult when a person is faced.
So be in our body and mind, but also be able to manage all the input that's coming in. Autistic people, all the inputs coming at once. If we look and stand still, it's impossible, because then we can't function. So we have to move, we have to look away, but we're super focused. It's the way it is. So that's, I think, one important thing that workplaces need to know as well. You know, if you have to look you in the eye or something, and I didn't know why, but I always explained it to people, and it helped them feel more comfortable talking to me and that I was paying attention to them. So that kind of mindful communication and stuff like that, but we need to learn as autistic people to do that with ourselves. So it's easy to do maybe what we might need, but to go home and sit in our body and tell ourselves what we need, that's different. It takes practice, and it needs to be in the workout sessions and his person that he's got advocating, or not advocating, but helping with that and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess routine and habits are important. Repetitive practice is basically what we started this whole conversation with, and what we're ending it with.
And we've talked about a lot of things today. Oh my gosh. But you know what? I love it, because you guys do have totally different perspectives, but then you have equal perspectives as well, depending on the topic, which is good. And we'll be able to showcase that when we make the videos and stuff like that. But I guess for me today, the kind of leaving this conversation, I would love to ask James, if you had to make a decision right now about the two jobs that you could take, which decision would you make based on what is right for you?
No, don't talk about it. Just say the job out loud. 1, 2, 3, go.
At this point, it'd be the camp post job. From what I need personally, I'm still going to talk to you about the accommodations and that, because there again, it's almost where I'd want to there again have an experiment.
Oh, I thought you were going to say
an experiment at the bank job, just to see, because I worry about what they'll allow me to do outside the bank, because they have rigid rules. Where the other job, I could do whatever else I want, because it's not going to affect what I do.
And he doesn't have to really deal too much with humans all the time. He's just giving them the mail.
So that's the biggest thing. I don't have
mentally and emotionally
interaction. I can save my mental interaction, but at some point,
until you're ready.
That's it. So I've alleviated some other financial things that I don't need to be making a certain amount of money.
I'll show you about the insurance that you get. It's super cheap. It's not expensive.
To do that. So that's what I would be leaning toward.
$307 a month in
right now, sort of thing. That's what I'd be leaning towards, because I can still do my work on my presentation, do the presentation, work with you, work on the grant stuff with you to earn some income to do with that. And if I needed to take a day off, I just don't accept a shift, so I could have a mental day off if I wanted to. Whereas at the bank, there again, that's an accommodation, but how much are they going to understand? How much are the co-workers going to understand? Well, James needs a mental day, and they'll be like, well, I need a mental day too, but it's different, because again, it's the understandability of how I am. And I know me, once I get into something, I'd be going 100 miles.
We just made the decision. Yay! You're going to take the Canada Post job. Pro muscles.
I'm just being sarcastic.
It's my happy dance. Yay!
I do have muscles. But,
I think that
it's getting thinner, by the way.
It's going to be exciting for you to be happy, for you to make a decision that you're actually making it for the right reasons in your life instead of trying to accommodate everybody else's needs, you know?
And that's a big step in itself because I've done things that like that my entire life.
Yeah.
And when I made those decisions,
Happy dance for James.
it's what I thought should be, and that's just what I thought my life expected to be. And now I want to invest in myself first. I still want to take care of people I care about, but part of my in care of others is taking care of myself.
It's like on the airplanes when you have to put the mask on first, because if your child, if you die and get suffocated and you can't put the mask on your child, they die too. So you can't have enough time with the mask on the child and save the child. It's the same thing.
You know, but I've always had a different mentality. I knew you were going to ask that too. I know you.
I always use that analogy, Leah, with the mask. Like you have to put it on yourself first. And I feel like, you know,
I think
James,
you did when we first spoke.
you making that decision. I mean, honestly, him making that decision just shows that you've grown over the last, you know, 6 months, a year, whatever it was that you've been working on this. Now that you have your diagnosis, you're realizing that, you know, self-care is number one. And to me, for you to have the relationship that you would like to have with your daughter and your family, even if it's, you know, Lori and you are just co-parenting, you have to be in a good place to have that. And it's not always about money, you know that. So I really feel like that'll be a positive.
And I'm a daughter
as well.
whose father wasn't there and wasn't in a good place. And then when he's in a good place, he started to be there. So as a daughter with a father who also in a different sense, you know, needed to build his own sense of safety and love for himself to be my father. It took 30 years, but it happened. James, you're not going to take 30 years. You're doing it now. And I, as a daughter, am super excited and proud to see a father working so hard on himself that he can be the best father he can be.
I agree. Uh-oh. Uh-oh.